In this tutorial, we're going to take a look at how to make the princess treat bag. So we have in front of us right here all the pieces cut out. We have the front and back of the bag, the base of the bag, ribbon for the handle, ribbon to go around the bag on top of where we attach the tulle to look like a tutu that does the finishing effect on the bag. Now the tulle that I'm using right here comes on a roll. It's 3 inches wide, so I can just use this as is. It's nice and glittery, but that also means that this is going to create a big mess while I'm working with it. Every time I touch it, glitter is falling off everywhere. So you just want to be careful and make sure that you have a good way to get that all cleaned up when you're finished with your project. You could also use other types of tulle that come on a roll. This one is a lot longer, about 6 inches, so you would have to cut off the strip size that you need. But if you can find it in a 3-inch wide pre-cut strip that isn't glittery, you will also be able to use something like that, or you can just cut tulle straight off the bolt. And then an additional added embellishment that you might want to have are little iron-on, hot fix, or glue-on little sequins that you can put at the top of each of these little triangles, which will mimic a finished crown. To begin, we're simply going to take the front and the back and we're going to sew the side seams. And because this is felt, I'm simply going to overlap them about 1/4 of an inch up here at the top, making sure that I have this overlapped, that once I sew this down, I can come back in and trim this at the top to be an even point that lines up the same size as all the other triangular points that I have across the top of the front and the back. So here we have this stitched down, and then I'm just going to come back in and even this out so that I have a nice clean point that looks like the other points along the crown. And this is the inside. So on the inside, I can go ahead and just trim out this seam allowance. Now we're going to take our strip of tulle and gather it. This is a 44-inch long piece, 3 inches wide, very sparkly. I'm going to sew a gathering large basting stitch about 1/2 inch down from the top edge all the way along the length of this piece of tulle and gather it to fit the width of this bag. I'm going to use a piece of design tape and simply just mark a line that's 1.5 inches down from the top point edge along the whole bag. So I have a line here where I'm going to place my tulle. Then I'm just going to gather up this tulle ruffle, and I'm going to place it just above this tape, and then I'm just going to go in before I sew it down and I'll peel the tape off. But I'm just using the tape right here as a guide to make sure that I have this evenly spaced. Now you could use any marking pen as long as it wasn't visible. You could also mark with pins just to mark this line to keep it consistent, because this does curve a little bit because of the way it's sewn. Alright, so here we have this pinned down just on top of this tape. So now I'm just going to go ahead underneath and just pull this tape out. It's barely stuck down anyway. So I have the tape removed. I have the tulle pinned down, and then I'm going to bring my ribbon over and I'm just going to sew this on the machine along this bottom edge of the ribbon on top of my gathering thread to begin to secure this down. Alright, so you can see here I have this stitched along the bottom edge of this ribbon, and on the ending side I have stopped about 1 inch back so that I can overlap these two sides and then have that ribbon right on top. So first we're going to go in right here and fold this ribbon out of the way and then trim off all the excess tulle that is along the top edge. Unless of course you wanted to leave that peeking out as an added little ruffle along this top edge of this ribbon, but for what we're doing, I'm going to fold the ribbon out of the way and I'm just going to trim back the tulle that's sticking up taller than the ribbon so that I can then come back in and then run my second row of top stitching right along the top edge of the ribbon. Okay, so we have that all the way trimmed off, and now I'm going to top stitch this down. And again, I'm going to end about 1 inch back from this edge just so that I can overlap this. All right, now we're just going to flip this over, fold this little portion back right here, bring your sides together and overlap them enough so that we can still trim this triangle point to line up with the other points, but it's about 1/4 of an inch overlap along the top and the bottom edge. So we're going to place that down, and you can pin that. You can use your double-sided quilter's tape. You could glue it. You could probably glue this whole bag and not do any sewing, but at this point we are working on this on a sewing machine. So I have this pinned in a few places, and we will stitch this down. So I have the tool, and I'm bringing this now back over, and I have my gathering threads still right here. I didn't trim those, so I will just pull this tool tightly on one of these threads to gather that to fit. And then the ribbon itself, I'm just going to trim that down a little bit, and I will fold that under so that it lines up right where I'm going to end up running my stitching. And I'm just going to put my last pin right here. So now I'm just going to carefully stitch this down. And because I have this folded this way, right side out, I could either carefully try to turn it inside out or just simply feed my machine foot down in from the top about halfway, and then I'll probably turn it around and do the same thing back up this way, just to sew down into this area as far down as I can from either direction. Then you're just going to want to flip this around, and we're just going to top stitch this area right here. So I do have this flipped around a little bit. I've turned it inside out just to make that a little bit easier to do. And I'm just going to feed that back on there just to secure that down. All right, then we're going to take the base of the bag and this circle, and on your finished bag you would want to do this all the same color. I have these separated just so it's super easy to see exactly what I'm doing. So I have a circle cut for the base, and then I have this piece which is straight. So I'm just going to come in here, and I'm going to cut slits about a little bit less than 1/4 of an inch just around the bottom of this bag. So you can see those will pull apart just a little bit, just so it's easy for me to wrap this around the whole edge of this circle. All right, now I've taken my circle and I've just marked 2 side points with 2 red pins, and these are going to line up with my 2 side seams just so I can evenly pin this around the entire bag. So I'm just going to set this inside here, lining up the side seam with the pin, and then I will come back in and just pin that down, and then on the other side I'm going to line that up with that side seam and then just pin that one down. And then I'm just going to work my way around the rest of the edge, just evenly pinning that down, and I can use my little snips that are in here to just make sure that that can curve around the edge. And then once we have that pinned down, I'm going to carefully stitch this on the machine, and I can stitch this on the machine. I could also just stitch this with a running stitch by hand all the way around. And here I am at the machine, and I have this, it's pretty bunchy, but it is pushed out of the way, and I'm doing it from the bag side up, and I'm just taking a few stitches, and then I'm rotating it, raising the presser foot just to move any of that folding out of the way. And then just adjusting as I go. It's a pretty small bag, so it's a little bit tight to try to shove all that through and around. It does fit the circle, and if you happen to sew in any little folds or puckers along the bottom edge, it's not really going to show because of the tool and the shape of the bag. And there we have that sewn down all the way around the circle, and we can just turn our bag right side out. We can also trim this down so there's very little seam allowance on the inside of the bag. And now we can turn the bag right side out, and you can see how that is sewn in at the bottom. And again, this could be the same color, and then it would blend in better. But from the top view, you have all your tulle, and you can fluff and adjust that. And this is the treat bag at this point. The only part we have left is decorating the points of the crown and attaching the ribbon handle. All right, so here we have this turned right side out. I have the bottom just pushed in slightly so that I can lay this flat. And now we're just going to take our ribbon and sew our handle right onto these side seams. So if we just attach that on both sides with a few little stitches, you'll have your finished handle so that she can carry that little bag right on her hand. All right, now we're at the final step and we can decorate this bag even more. So we have sparkly tulle, but if we wanted to add little gems along the points, we could do that with iron-on little sequins, and I have some on here. This is in the shape of a butterfly, but as I've shown in the Working with Embellishments course, you can pull these off and place them individually. So this would just peel off, and you could remove these with tweezers and use some individually and just place them or do little patterns or something like that. And then those affix with an iron. So from the back side, you'd press that down and the heat would activate the glue to get those to stick down. Another option would just be some glitter glue. And this is designed for fabric. You could either just do beaded little circles so it looks like gems, or you could go along the tips and go all the way around and you just follow that pointed edge even along this ribbon line for something that might be a little bit more user-friendly for a little child. There would be no choking hazard involved in that. Nothing could fall off, so that is a good option. Now for this one, we are just going to finish it off with these little gems. This was a string of trim that they were all connected, and I just clipped them apart. And then if I turn them sideways, I can set each one right into the point. And I could glue this down. I could sew this down like a button. There's holes in here, so I could just hand stitch that down. For this tutorial, I am just going to put a dab of glue and just set that right in place, right in the corner. And then I'll have that glued down, and then I can work my way around and do that on every point. And this is wet long enough for me to position it just to make sure that it fits the point and it's the same spacing from the top as the one before, but then it's dry right away. And here you can see we have all these glued down all the way around the bag. So it's a very cute finish, an added little bit of bling to this Princess Treat bag. And now that I'm looking at this all together, I think I'm going to come back in and add this little tiny silver trim along my pink ribbon just to tie in the silver sparkly little sequins with the whole bag, and then I think that helps pull it together a little bit more, so you can see that. So I can just glue this down or stitch this down by hand. And here we have the finished Princess Tutu Crown Halloween treat bag. It's the perfect added embellishment for any princess costume.